I'd like to introduce our guest, Bernadette Wulf. She is a visionary artist, a writer, a Reiki master, and founder and director of the Faehallows School of Magic. She invites you to step into the new earth reality now, where effortless prosperity and thriving in harmony with all life is the new normal. Bernadette is passionate about living a magical life, protecting the environment, whole plant foods, nutrition, organic gardening, and helping people activate the templates of the new earth through connecting with the fairy realm. She has decades of experience teaching Celtic fairy magic and Arthurian lore, and in her written courses and online guided shamanic journey workshops. Bernadette is also a plant-based health coach and an intuitive energy healer. So welcome, Bernadette. Very glad that you're here.
Thank you.
Really lovely to have you here. I just want to say also, if you go to the show's page on bbsradio.com, you'll see Bernadette has given us a free gifts page, which is at wulfworks.com. That's Wulf spelled W-E-U-L-F instead of O-L-F. wulfworks.com/magical-free-gifts/. And her magic school is at celticmysteryschool.com. She also shares more about the fairies at fairysource.com, and that's spelled F-A-I-R-Y, and also more about whole plant foods nutrition at plantbasedvegancoach.com. So wonderful. I'll give all those URLs again, but right now we just want to hear about Bernadette's path, because I find it to be a very beautiful path, but still in the modern era, a little unusual. I used to go to FairyCon every year when they had it in Philadelphia, and I was reassured by the sheer numbers there that there were so many people who didn't just believe in the Fae, but had direct contact with them. Now, Bernadette, you've got a special school called the Faehallows School of Magic. So can you just give us some background? What led you to create that school? And how did you come up with the name Faehallows? And what does it mean?
The name is a combination of Fae, meaning fairy, and hallows, which is a word that means sacred objects. And it comes from an Irish tradition where the Tuatha De Danann brought 4 sacred objects to Ireland when they came.
Yes.
And they are the gods and goddesses of Ireland, who are also called fairies or the She.
Yes.
And they include Bridget and Lou and the Dagda and Danu, who's the kind of the overlighting mother goddess of the tribe. Tuatha De Danann means the tribe of Dana. So, these 4 objects are kind of connected with the 4 foundations of Western magic, the 4 directions, the 4 elements, and there's 4 fairy cities from which the Spear of Victory and the Cauldron of Plenty and the Stone of Destiny and the Sword of Truth came from. So it's kind of, my school is kind of based on the foundation of the 4 directions and cities and the hallows. So that's why I call it Faehallows.
And so why did you start the school? It is quite a special path to take to be a teacher of that kind of mystical teachings and to speak of the other worlds.
Involved with some local pagan groups who did rituals where they called in the 4 directions, and they used tools and things that had connections with the hallows. And I just felt like they were kind of going through the motions without really understanding the deeper connections of where that all came from. And the tradition that's underlying the Wicca and Gardnerian and reclaiming and all these traditions that are pretty popular these days. So I wanted to teach people how to get back to the roots of, where all this was sourced from. So that's why I started the school.
Oh, excellent. That's a brilliant reason. So, but when did you yourself first begin to connect with the Fae?
Oh gosh, probably not very consciously. When I was a child, I was always fascinated by them, but I didn't really consciously have a personal relationship with them until I was older. Started taking workshops with R.J. Stewart when I was probably in my early 30s. And I actually had real connections, real experiences in his guided journeys of meeting the fairies. So before that, it was probably when I was in high school, when I read the Lord of the Rings books. I had this feeling when I read about the elves that there was something real about that. It kind of reminded me of something I knew.
Sure.
So I was looking for more about that. And when I saw the R.J. Stewart's workshop advertised, I was like, yeah, I have to go to that, because it was like following a treasure hunt. It was a clue.
Oh, wonderful. Had you ever seen any when you were little, or just sort of felt their presence?
Not that I remember.
Not you remember?
No, it wasn't until I was older.
I think children do see them but don't always remember later on in life. So, I'm sorry, you're saying you did see them as you got older?
Yeah, when I got older, I think I had to, open my mind to it by reading things like Rudolf Steiner and the Theosophists and people that were like talking about them like they were real. And then I started being like, okay, these people are seeing them, so there must be something there. So then my mind was able to perceive them, and I wasn't blocking it anymore.
So what do you teach as far as the Arthurian legend goes? How did the Fae connect to the land of Avalon?
Well, that's something I've really been delving into lately, and it's really fascinating. As I see it, the land of Avalon is sort of like between the fairy realm and the human world, or it's a part of the fairy realm that's closest to the human world, so that it's easy to access by humans, whereas some parts of the fairy realm are not very accessible at all, and they don't even want us there.
Yeah.
But the Avalon fairies really reach out to humans, and they've been working with us for hundreds of years, at least since Arthurian times, back in 500 AD or whenever that was. But they've been actively working to bridge the worlds between the humans and fairies. And I feel like they're actually working, they've been planting seeds of the new earth in human consciousness all this time, especially with Camelot, which kind of represented the ideals of the new earth, but it wasn't ready to manifest in the world yet. But now it's time to bring that energy into our world. And so the Avalon fairies are really behind that and working to make that happen.
Well, why do you feel that is? Is it because of the energies on the planet now? I mean, they've been around for thousands and thousands of years, probably. I'm just wondering why there seem to be more people invested in the idea of the Fae and wanting to see them and wanting to experience them. Whereas even when I was a little kid, even though I believed in them, I didn't talk about them very much. And I would look for them in the woods behind our house in Maine, Very disappointed I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there. Why do you suppose now there's more openness and more willingness to accept that they're real and that they're part of our world, and even that they can help us?
I think there's a big consciousness shift happening in our world now, and we're raising our consciousness to the higher vibration, and they live on a plane slightly vibrating a little faster than ours. And so as we raise our vibration, we become more aware of them and more open to the fact that they exist. And it's all part of the big shift that's happening in our world.
Absolutely it is. And I think it's a beautiful breakthrough, because then we begin to want to see what has been hidden for such a long time. And this is to me, this is a really tremendous breakthrough, a huge blessing, because if you don't believe something, the chances of you experiencing it are tiny to nil. If you don't hold it in your space as being real, just like a lot of people will say things like, oh, I'll never have money, or I'll never do this, never do that. So already they're not letting themselves envision being able to travel, being able to quit work because they've got enough money, or being able to just, offer their gifts creatively or as a volunteer, or they don't envision that they'll meet someone new because they'll say, I'm past the age for it. So they're not holding it in their heart space. Do you teach anything about that at Faehallows, about how we birth things into the outer world by doing what the Fae do, which is to hold something as real in our energies?
Yeah, I mean, it's all connected with law of attraction, because, you can't have magic without law of attraction, because you have to work with that energy of like attracts like. And if your vibration is not matching what you want, then you're not going to be able to create it in your life. So the fairies already do that naturally. That's just the way to live. And
Yes.
so when we connect with them, it becomes easier for us to see, to believe that it's possible for one thing and to see how we can do it too. But the way magic works is that it works with the subconscious mind. And since people generally, when they want something, they think with their conscious mind, but their subconscious, which rules like 90 to 95% of our lives, it may be saying something totally different.
Yeah.
So, you may be saying, I want $1 million, but your subconscious mind is saying you don't deserve that, or you didn't come here to experience that, or whatever it's saying. If you don't address that and get your subconscious mind on board, then you're never going to be able to manifest anything that you want. So when you use magic, you're using rhythm and rhyme and repetition and ritual and symbols and images that speak directly to the subconscious mind, and you're bypassing that rational part of your mind that can block it and question it. So that's why it works to use the magical tools and the rituals and spells and incantations and all the things that people do, because it is a way of communicating with the subconscious.
That is really amazing, and it sounds fascinating. It sounds like the school is really a fascinating place to connect with. I guess probably you connect with people online. Isn't that right? That's how you have your course, your teaching course, or how do you do it?
I have 3 courses that are written courses, and they also have guided shamanic journeys involved with them, but they're written courses that are sent out monthly, and people can do the homework and go through the process. And then I also do online workshops, live guided shamanic journey workshops, which you know about because you've been to them.
Yes, exactly.
But the written courses, they the foundation course guides you through a year and a day of following this path of the Hallows through the year. And I know people say it transforms their lives. A lot of people have given me really positive feedback about it.
Oh, that is wonderful. I just want to explain to everyone what Bernadette's referring to is that I'm a part of her magical manifestation mastermind group, Great Alliteration, which we meet just for, an hour and a half or so, one Saturday out of the month. And Bernadette takes us on these amazing journeys, and I was shocked one time when she said that she mainly just sort of makes them up on the spot, but they're astounding, absolutely beautiful meditation journeys. And I have met up with real healing, for one thing, and also real, I want to say you just break through moments in my own consciousness, because when you're in a meditation journey and you're being guided using your imagination, you're working with symbols, you're working with beautiful metaphors, and you're in the allegory, and you're realizing everything in your life is a symbol to a degree. And so that is going to wake up aspects of the subconscious that have wanted to heal and didn't know how. It's going to open the doors, unlock doors, and open them to capabilities to manifest that you didn't know you had. It's very, very beautiful, and it's very life-affirming, I find. And then I was briefly involved in another course of yours, a sort of a 6-week course, Bernadette. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
The Fairy Path course?
Oh, yeah. That was so beautiful. And we're all on these Zoom meetings together and from all different places. And it's just this beautiful feeling of being centered and supported by these lovely people in the group, and as well as by Bernadette. So I really do encourage people to look into her work, because, it might seem kind of subtle and it's not big and splashy, but then you realize as you get into it, you've opened that low door in the garden wall that nobody knew was there, and moved into some beautiful place that you had accidentally held in secrecy, and it's in your own psyche, it's in your own spirit. Absolutely amazing. Can you tell us, well, actually, let me ask this, speaking of which, how do we bring the magic of the elven and the fairy realm into our everyday lives when it seems to elude us in a way?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to say that it's not like I just make up journeys off the top of my mind.
Okay.
It's like they're fed to me.
Yeah,
you're channeled.
Yeah, you're channeled. Definitely, yes. I should say it that way. Yes, indeed.
Well, the way I like to invite the fairies in is just to use my imagination to kind of open the door and then trust my intuition about where that's leading me. And a lot of people feel like imagination is just something to be brushed aside. It's not real. You're just making it up. But you don't make up things just randomly, you know. When you set an intention to connect with the fairy realm, you're kind of opening a door. And then when you start setting your imagination in that direction, it goes through that door into something that's real. And I think it's really hard without getting out of the rational side of your brain into that imaginary part. It's really hard to connect with anything in the other world. So imagination is a way of pulling your consciousness into the more intuitive side of your brain so that you can actually access what's there in the other worlds and the subtle realms.
This is why we need the help, you know. If you've got some help, someone to lead you on this sort of thing, and Bernadette can offer you that, then you're much more likely to find yourself in those subtle realms and really experiencing them personally. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. You know, the first few times it seems kind of weird, and you're thinking, am I just making this up? You know, it's like it's like so new that it's hard to accept it. Your mind hasn't quite learned how to accept it yet. Yeah. But the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more fun it is.
Wonderful. Well, can you talk to us a bit about the purpose of magic? What's behind it, and how does high magic compare with everyday practical magic?
Well, I think the reason people are attracted to magic is because they want to change something in their life. They don't like the way things are in one way or another, and they look to magic as a way to change it. And practical magic is, the way I see it, is practical magic is changing things in the external world, and high magic is changing things in your internal world.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, you know, people have come up with all kinds of rituals and tools and things that they use to convince their subconscious mind that they want a new car, or they want to have raised at their job, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if you get your subconscious mind on board and you're focused on attracting that, it will eventually show up. But when you are working with the high magic, or white magic as they call it, it's about knowing thyself, as the oracle said. It's about the alchemy of turning lead into gold and clearing limiting beliefs and the enslavement in the matrix, and opening to the awareness of your wholeness and your oneness with the universe and your expansive higher self. So, and the funny thing is that when you start working with the high magic, it transforms your consciousness, your awareness, and your outlook on the world, so that you don't even want to use the practical magic anymore, because everything flows a lot more smoothly, just because you're in harmony with who you really are.
Excellent. Absolutely beautiful. I agree. Absolutely. I just want to switch gears for a minute. Our friend Carlton is on the line. Carlton, you still there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Have you got a question for Bernadette or a comment?
I appreciate that introduction, and this is your friend, Carlton. Hi, Bernadette. Welcome to the Knights of the Roundtable.
Thank you.
You just brought up a topic that I'm going to let somebody else ask about, because that's a whole separate conversation when we talk about magic. But let's go back to fairies. I brought a big storage box of questions for them, but they're going to be very open-ended. It's going to lead, and you can take it any way you want, okay? Those of us who are not tapped in like you were trying to visualize, we're trying to also conceptualize here. Help us understand a little about because all we know is what we see in the cartoons, right? We read about them in various esoteric references. Otherwise, we know what we see in the movies and depicted in cartoons. So, Tinkerbell. So please help us understand what fairies are and what they are not. Obviously, they stay out of view. So what can you tell us about their dimensions, like what size they are? So are they humanoid? Or do they have 10 fingers and toes? Are they set up a little different than that? How do they interact with other realms? Because when we think of fairies, we think of the elemental realm, the realm of trolls, the realm of leprechauns, etc.
Yeah.
How do they interact in that realm? Do you connect with all of them, or just fairies? Are they found only in certain countries, certain climates, certain types of year? Help us understand some of those things. Are those fair questions?
Those are great questions.
I think I got most of what you were asking.
That's kind of tough for you to repeat, though, Caroline. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Well, I mean, it's interesting you ask about what size most fairies are, what their dimensions are, but that can vary, can't it, Bernadette?
Yeah, I mean, a lot like our physical world, there's multitudes of different beings in the fairy realm that are range from tiny little creatures to taller than humans.
Yeah.
And, and even the ocean, they call them the divas of the oceans and the mountains are huge. And then, it goes all the way down to tiny little fairies that take care of seeds and things, So those are in the nature spirit realm. And Tinkerbell is kind of like a sylph for one of those kind of flower fairies or something like that. And that's what most people think of fairies, thanks to Disney.
Yes.
But they're just one tiny part of the whole fairy realm. And the fairies that I work with are actually the elven, kind of like the elves in the Lord of the Rings. They're human size or taller, and they're not really involved in making nature grow, making the plants grow and all the aspects of nature so much as they work with those beings, but they kind of have a life of their own. And what else?
Why are they here?
Why are they here? It's a good
question.
Why
are we here? I mean, they're part of creation.
Yeah. Kind of like, angels, I think, are also etheric beings, but they exist in the higher dimensions, and fairies seem to be, they are etheric beings to a good degree, but we can see them sometimes because they're not of such an incredibly high vibration that they're not really of the earth. They're still of the earth. It's very interesting, and I think they kind of bless and guard the animals and the plants and the sea and the waters, the air. I see them as doing a lot for the earth. But then you've got all this other mythic talk about how, in Ireland, if you happen upon them, you happen upon the wrong crowd at the wrong time. They consider you've intruded and they might get angry. Our friend Omina here is from Ireland, and she's talked about how the leprechauns, anyway, have let local people know when they don't want a quarry to be, bothered or what have you. And I've heard of things like a fairy path. There are places you can't build a fairy mound. The hawthorn bush, you can't cut that down or you will suffer consequences. So they're not totally angelic. But Omina, were you going to say something?
Well, yes, I was going to say, we grew up with, you always had fairy rots, and they were round circles, and that's where the fairies would gather. And of course, when we were kids and we would wander the fields on our own, because you could do that then when you were little, but we were always told to stay away from them. I think it was a way of parents keeping us safe, because if you go into the Roth, you're not going to be found. The fairies have taken you.
Oh, wow.
But for real.
What does that mean, they've taken you?
Well, I don't know. To me, my world with the fairy realm, the fairies were here before we were.
Yeah.
They live in the underworld of the earth. I've seen gnomes to do the same thing. I've seen gnomes. They're just a different class of small people. But the fairies can be very vicious if they want to be, if you have disrespect to them. If you respect them, you can actually get them to find things for you, bring things to you, be very, very loving towards you. A lot of people have fairy guides. They are fairy angels that work with people. And in the 50s, the story you were talking about, it was all over Ireland, because I remember it very well, where they were, it was a stone quarry, and they would break up the huge big boulders for stone. They'd make all kinds of stone for building and whatnot. And they had this huge big boulder that they needed to remove, and they removed it. They had all the equipment and everything else because they were going to actually use it. And that was on a Friday where they actually moved the boulder. They went back Monday morning to work, and the boulder was back in its original place.
Wow.
They closed down the quarry because they had disturbed leprechauns. Now you can believe that or not believe it, but it was very believable then because they had pictures. I mean, it was a huge, big paper news. You know, that's how we learned about newspaper.
Yeah.
Because it was huge. So I grew up with all the magic of the fairies. I grew up with everybody talking about the fairies. I grew up with everybody respecting the fairies, respecting their space, respecting their ground. I'm telling you, in the field in Ireland, there were circles of trees, and they were called the fairy rocks. And that's where the fairies gathered. That's all I know. And I know they're real. I've seen them. I've seen pictures of them, if that makes sense. They're so quick, it's very hard to capture them because the naked eye, the human naked eye, doesn't go that fast. Not like fairy energy does.
Yeah.
So, to me, they're real. Because
And,
what you call
everybody
it,
has their role, you know, whether we're talking about, just like you said, gnomes, leprechauns, fairies, hobbits, dragons.
oh yes,
Yes.
yes.
Everybody has their spot. They don't all necessarily eat at the same dinner table. They don't all necessarily interact. They all have their role. They all have their space. And
Exactly.
sometimes if you're of a certain dimension or of a certain consciousness, you can connect with them. Otherwise, if they need you, they'll find you.
Well, if you're open to it, they'll find you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Tara has an angel fairy that works with her. Lily, I think, is that Tara?
Gigi.
Oh, Gigi. Okay, so I can't remember when I told you that. It's a while back, but I know you have a fairy,
Oh, I love that.
working with you. Yes.
So great.
So,
Yeah.
Do they all talk English?
yes. Well, the thing is, when I'm doing, they'll speak any language you want. When I'm doing readings with people, and I get the information, they're from the fairy realm. And when I say that to them and explain to them what that means, they take this huge big sigh of relief because now they understand how they fit in our world. Because some people struggle greatly with it, not understanding because their energy is different.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Bernadette had to say about that, but it's real when it's happening at the time in front of me.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put this out there and I'll let you guys go. If Tara has a fairy connection, that's what I just heard, right?
Yes.
Right.
Well, Tara, could you invite your friend to one of the calls?
Oh, I'll just
Maybe she
say,
has something to share with the rest of us.
Gigi is a very private fairy.
Well, they all are, but you know.
I think you have to call on your own.
Yes, that's right. That's
Well, can somebody at least help me with an intro? You know, one of you that has a fairy friend, can you like put a word out so
Carlton,
I can meet mine?
Yeah.
Carlton, it's very easy. You sit there and you say, okay, from the fairy realm, would you let me know, do I have a fairy that works with me? Or a leprechaun, or whatever your heart's desire, or a dragon even.
Yeah.
You sit there in a mild meditation form, ask them to come to you, they will.
You think I got leprechauns in Georgia? You got to go to Ireland.
They're everywhere.
Well, they're all over the world. I don't think you have to go. You mean you have lily fairies, you have wood fairies, you have water fairies, you have backyard fairies. You have all kinds. The fairy realm just does not include female fairies. It includes the whole realm of the leprechauns. They're all part of, you know how the human race is all one human race. We're just made up of a bunch of different ethnic groups.
As a
Same in the fairy
I'm
realm.
with you.
Yeah. So I'll send you a fairy.
I was going to add something, if I might, Omina. I studied with this lady, Dora van Gelder Kunz. She was head of the Theosophical Society and was a fairy in a human body. And she showed us who she was. She showed us all these healers that were together at the Theosophical Society in this big room. She completely turned into light, and her fairy body showed up where her human body was in front of all of us.
Wow.
That was
That'd be cool.
fabulous. And I'm just going to say that I've seen more things than you can shake a stick at, and you have too, Omina. And Bernadette, you haven't begun to tell us the rest of your stories.
That's my cue. Bernadette, we're all ears. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Carlton.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you to the co-hosts. Well, let's get back to Bernadette's stories here, because she's got a wonderful connection with Merlin. Can you talk about your personal connection to Merlin, who has always fascinated me since I was a kid? One of your courses is focused on him. When did you first connect with Merlin, Bernadette?
He's always been, ever since I heard of him back when I was a kid, I was fascinated by him, and I didn't personally meet him until I was in a workshop where we were in a guided visualization journey to go and visit him, and he was so real. And I realized that he's one of my guides. He's been one of my guides for a long time. And I just wasn't aware of it until then. So I work with him a lot as far as I think I'm kind of on the same page as him as far as working to bring fairy realm and the human realms together, which is part of his mission that shows up in the Arthurian stories, where he's orchestrating things for, the fairies to work with the humans. Even Arthur's birth, where his mother was from the fairy realm and his father was her Pendragon, and he tricked her into thinking he was her real husband, and orchestrated Arthur's birth that way. So he's been kind of instrumental in planting these seeds. And a lot of the Arthurian stories are about fairy initiations, where these fairy women come as ugly hags and test the knights, and if they treat them kindly, then they turn into a beautiful maiden. And there's several stories like that where they test them and kind of initiate them into the fairy realms, and they lead them on these quests out into the woods, and a white doe, which is a fairy, will lead them into the fairy realm. So Merlin is kind of part of all that, and he works with Nimue, who's one of the main ladies of the lake, and together they kind of create this human fairy bond. And I think part of the reason he wants that to happen is because, well, the way Wendy Berg explains it is that humans and fairies, and I'm not talking about the nature spirits now, I'm talking about the she-type fairies, or the elves. We started out as one race, and the humans went deeper into the material world, and the fairies stayed in the etheric plane. And that when we did that, we each lost something, and that until we come back together and rejoin, we won't have a wholeness.
Wow.
So I think that's a big part of Merlin's mission, is to restore that wholeness between the human and fairy races.
Has he offered guidance specifically to your life? Have you learned lessons from Merlin that really struck you as being full of wisdom and that were a light for your path, you might say?
Yeah, he's prompting me. I think probably he was the one that instigated all my whole Faehallows magic school and the workshops that I do. And he's kind of in the background, always kind of orchestrating those things to come together. Yeah, it's just sort of given me a broader perspective on reality than I had before, where I worked with him.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you've been so connected to fairy realms in the Arthurian story for so long. You've probably accumulated their wisdom teachings. I'm wondering if there's a particular lesson or a particular piece of wisdom that comes back to you over and over.
The thing that I noticed most about working with them is that they live in joy, And, even if things happen that they don't like, they immediately bring themselves back to that feeling of joy and appreciation and looking at life. I mean, kind of looking at life through rose-colored glasses, as they say. They don't let, the heaviness, the lower vibrations that bog people down in the physical world, pull them down. And we can tap into that energy, which is why I like to lead journeys to the fairy realm, because when you connect with that energy, it uplifts your soul, and you can bring that back with you into your life, and make your life more and more magical and joyful.
Oh, wonderful. You also teach Fairy Reiki. Can you tell us a bit about that? How is it different from other forms of Reiki?
Well, it uses the same universal life force energy as the Usui Reiki, but the symbols are connected with the elements, so it's much more earthy. It's more connected with nature and the elements of earth, air, fire, and water that we need to bring into balance in our lives and in ourselves in order to live a happy life. Because if we have too much fire, we burn ourselves out. If we have too much water, we can get bogged down with emotion. And if we have too much air, we can get all in our head and lose touch with our heart. So all these aspects need to be kept in balance, and Fairy Reiki is all about balancing all those energies.
So it's a very earth-based view of that healing modality. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, you're also an artist. Your paintings are full of these beautiful fairy images and just mystical beings. How did you, or when did you start painting? And can you tell us a bit about your journey, your path as an artist?
Yeah, I've been drawing since I was in kindergarten, or maybe even before that, as soon as I could pick up a crayon. I used to spend hours at our dining room table that we had in our formal dining room, not where we used to eat, but we had it all covered with these papers my dad would bring back from school because he was a teacher, and then I would draw on the backs of them. And so I've been drawing ever since I was little. And then when I got into high school, I started playing around with painting and art classes, and just kind of developed my own style. So it's just, I don't know, I guess I was just born an artist, and it had to come out.
Have you got images of your paintings on any of the websites that you have? Because I feel like, for instance, the CelticMysterySchool.com.
I've got the Wulfworks.net.
Wulfworks.net, okay.
WULFWORKS.net. That's where my art is.
Okay, wonderful. I encourage people to look into it because there's amazing energy in these paintings that Bernadette does. She did one that was an abundance angel, I think, that she allows me to use when I put out emails about abundance teachings, and it's so cool. Do you feel like these artworks are imbued with fairy magic or elven presence as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the energy that I tap into when I'm painting, and I feel like art is a form of magic because it speaks directly with your subconscious mind, and bypasses the rational thinking mind. So yeah, it can change your consciousness just by looking at a painting.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? People think about film and music and dance and theater as shifting how they see life, but I think visual art likewise, as in other words, paintings and sculpture. I am so changed by phenomenal art. And Rama and Tara and I live in a town which is Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is, I think, number 6 in the world for having not only a lot of art galleries, but astounding ones.
Yeah.
And we're very blessed that way, yeah. So before we close here, I want to mention the whole plant food nutrition work that you do. So what inspired that? Were you trying to get over an illness yourself, or just always been health orientated, or how did you get started on that? Because you've got this whole lovely website, plantbasedvegancoach.com. What inspired that?
I was always interested in nutrition, probably because my dad was kind of a health nut, but when I was 19, I became a vegetarian, and that kind of set me on this path of learning about nutrition because I had never met a vegetarian, and it wasn't anything, it wasn't mainstream at that time. was a long time ago, like 50 some years ago. And so, yeah, I just felt like I had to learn about where to get, the things that I was leaving out of my diet. And that's kind of led me on a path of learning more and more about it over the years, and learning a lot of stuff that I found out was not true. And, eventually coming to a diet that really works, and learning who the people are that I can trust. Not that most of the media stuff you see out there is a bunch of hogwash, and there's a few teachers and researchers that really know what they're talking about. So, I like to share that with people, because it's so important for not only for animal welfare and human health, but the effect on the environment of animal agriculture is horrible. It really causes a lot of pollution and greenhouse gases.
And the animals are treated very badly in these huge mega farms.
Yeah. I mean, just there's not really any reason to eat meat, or animal products at all. So, I built that website so that people could learn about that and feel confident in changing their diets.
Oh, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful to have you on, Bernadette. And again, for Bernadette's free gifts, you want to go to Wulfworks, WULF works.com/magical-free-gifts/ The magic school is CelticMysterySchool.com, which is a wonderful site. You can learn more about fairies at fairysource.com, and about whole plant foods nutrition at Bernadette's website, plantbasedvegancoach.com. And it's been absolutely wonderful having you on.
I just wanted to say, Bernadette, you're a woman after my own heart. I just absolutely love what you do, and I live it, and it's absolutely a joy to live with the life-giving forces of a vegan lifestyle and a vegan diet. It really works. And the other thing I was going to ask, if we could just do a real quick thing here, maybe you could lead a little bit, to ask the fairy kingdom and all the elves and the menahunis and all the little people and the big ones to the great big beings in the sky to go to Lahaina in Maui. 2,000 structures burnt to the ground.
Wow.
And the entire town is reduced to ashes. And that banyan tree, we have a lot to, let's just keep the consciousness and take it through the night and into the next day. And thank you for you might want to say a little something, and we can do this together with your lead, Bernadette.
Yeah, I would just like to reach out to Mother Earth to start with, and just honor her. And when she was injured too, and ask that all the nature spirits of Hawaii come and rebuild the land and help the people restore their lives. I just see like a great white light shining around there, of healing energy flowing in, coming from all over the world. All the people that are sending their thoughts and good wishes there. And all the kingdoms of nature are in harmony and sending that energy of harmony to the islands. And in the templates of the fairy realm, it's still perfect.
Amen. Yes.
They can rebuild it.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bernadette.
Well, thank you. It's been really fun.
No, thank you for that lovely invocation for healing, and thank you for being here with us. Really wonderful to hear about the Fae, and of course, we had our friend Kathy Korn on. She is terrific and a big supporter as a sci-fi adult mystery paranormal author. She's a big supporter of Bernadette's work as well, and so am I. And so again, I would really welcome people to look into CelticMysterySchool.com. This is a whole realm you and I have been taught to completely ignore, and our spirits have paid the price. And it's time to open up and allow the beauty and the healing, the joy, the music and the dance of the fairy realm, and realize that is also our lives. Yes, indeed. So thank you so much for being here, Bernadette. Huge blessings.
All right,
And,
thank you.
Have a lovely rest of the evening.
You too.
Thank you, sweetie.